She issued a report along with the Center for American Progress back in the fall, and it was a groundbreaking piece of work that was highlighted on all the major TV channels and CNN for a whole week there. It's all I heard about. AAUW came up with a response to that, and so my job today is to tell you a little bit about the report and our response. Back on the back table are the pages that are AAUW's response. I'm sorry I didn't bring the report, but it's over 100 pages. I did, however, bring the website where you can download it or just look at the parts of it that interest you. We'll start out by saying the quote that something's happening out there. It is thrilling and important. Remember, just 100 years ago, women in the U.S. couldn't vote or own property. Just 65 years ago, I think Andrea mentioned military services and women. Remember when the WACs were kicked out after World War II with no benefits, no pay, no recognition, and no way home? They had to find their own way home. Just 40 years ago, a woman couldn't even get a credit card in her own name. And look how far we've come. We're in debt and filing bankruptcy right up there with men. and our homes are being foreclosed at an even higher rate. A woman's nation changes everything. This is about the Shriver report and our response. What does it mean, a woman's nation? Because that is the title, a woman's nation. This changes everything. Well, in 2009, for the very first time in U.S. history, half of the U.S. workforce, I left that out, are women. And even more important is that mothers are the primary breadwinners for nearly 2/3 of American families. This is causing a permanent shift in our culture, and there's no going back. No more Ozzie and Harriet, no pearls when we mop the floors. What does this mean? It's far from just changing demographics. It's going to change the way we work and play, how our children and grandchildren go to school, and how we view our marriage and our roles in it. It is creating a fundamental shift in how Americans live and do business. And understandably, many of our institutions are lagging behind. Social arrangements have not caught up with economic changes. The Economist magazine, certainly not a feminist rag, as they'd say, reports that the empowerment of women was the great change in the past 50 years, and now dealing with its social consequences will be the great challenge of the next 50 years. So it's not just us or AAUW that sees things are changing. Here's the rub. I can just hear my mother saying this because she's an exception reporter, always fun. She'll say, Sharon, women have always worked. What's different? You know, things were always tough for them. The fact is, in the past, the majority of women didn't work. The whole model of how we live and do work is based on the fact of a primary breadwinner and a stay-at-home mother. That's why your doctors and dentist office, my doctor sees people 9 to 3. There are no evening hours. You go to med check if you need it. There is a funny story I read. I got Gail Goodman's new book about how things changed, women from the 60s on, and she's got a lot of funny stories in it. There were always working women. Once there was a New York journalist who flew from New York to Boston to interview a Nobel Prize-winning scientist, and in her hotel that evening, she stopped down at the bar for a drink. And the bartender informed her, I'm sorry, we don't serve women here. However, if you follow me, I'll be able to give you your whiskey sour. And he took her to a little room off the ladies' restroom, a little lounge off the ladies' restroom. That was Betty Friedan. Things have changed, and they are changing. Survey results. Part of the Shriver report was based on a survey of 3,400 people across the country. And the survey showed that attitudes are changing. Younger men have grown up with women in the workplace. They expect to be active in their children's lives, and they are less likely to move geographically and to climb the corporate ladder if their spouse has a good job. Attitudes have changed, but in many cases, policies have not. The reality is that school years are still based on the agrarian model of kids are home to help with the crops. They send kids home mid-afternoon, and childcare is expensive and in short supply. Remember back in the 90s, there was all the big push for family-friendly companies who established childcare centers on site? Guess what? The more we need them, the more they've gone away or the prices have gone up. Dwindling public support means that lower income families rely on the unpaid work of women to solve problems, not just with child care, but with elder care. I'm hearing that more and more and more about elderly parents moving in, or people having to take off because someone has Alzheimer's in their family. It has become a real problem. Now that women are expected to do their fair share, they're doing that plus more. Workplaces are simply slow to respond to the changing needs. The Shriver Report's not just about women, it's about young men too, and middle-aged men too. They have family responsibilities, and nowadays people work all kinds of shifts in the 24/7 economy. You know, back when I was little, I used to think about this. When you were out during the day, like let's say you had a sick day from school, there was no one on the roads or the streets, and now it's just busy all the time, and you wonder, don't these people work? Yeah, they do. They're working, you know, third shift, they're working at a hospital. I have a niece who works three days a week at a hospital, but she works 12-hour days. That would have been unheard of years ago. Doctors' offices, cable companies, and in fact, most of our support systems are still working 9 to 5. I did want to throw this in though. There are some flickers of good things that are happening. I think some of the educational institutions are really trying to keep up with this. And now, in addition to women being in the workforce, the number of non-traditional students has outstripped the number of traditional college students. And I think the colleges are responding to that. There's more programs like Indiana Wesleyan, and I think even Anderson has some things like that. Ivy Tech certainly has a lot of online classes and things that are responding to people's needs. A couple of great quotes that I loved. First one, of course, is from a man. In the olden days, women used sexuality in the workplace to find a husband. Now they have all the power. And from a woman, women don't need equal pay, they need to be paid more because we're typically responsible for more in our families, and we have to pay to get the lawn mowed and to get those set of French doors put up. So we should get more. I like that. A little bit about the Shriver Report. Maria Shriver and the Center for American Progress worked together to look at the consequences of this major tipping point. Maria did interviews all across the country, some of which we saw on TV, and CAP did the research work. Together, they looked at government, business, faith, culture, the media, and our healthcare and educational institutions. They talked from corporate executives down to people who work in hotels and janitors. And they considered ways that they can adapt to this sea change in American lives. One thing they found is our policy landscape remains stuck in an idealized past. And that past says that people are married for life as a couple, there's a full-time breadwinner and a full-time homemaker who raises the children herself. And we know that just isn't true anymore. A little bit about Maria, and I gained so much respect for her. We all know her mother, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, had a big impact on her. Maria is the First Lady of California, home to 18 million women, and she began to host 4 or 5 years ago this women's conference that grew from several thousand people up to 25,000 people at the last conference. All kinds of people, all from all of Fortune 500 companies down to cleaning services, and they're doing more than just telling people. They're starting some micro-lending services and connecting people to different services they need in California.